Hello, my fantasy friends, and welcome to your Week 7 wide receiver preview presented by HotRoster. I'm Cam Stewart, and it's my job to stuff you with as much wide receiver knowledge as possible. So let's start with the matchups. So far, the Jets, Packers, Raiders, Lions, and Ravens have given up the most fantasy points per game to opposing wideouts. But you know what? I don't like that stat. A team like the Ravens are only giving up 159 yards per game to wideouts, but have allowed 12 touchdowns so far to receivers this season. So the numbers should regress by week 10, and I think the Ravens D against wideouts still might end up in the middle of the pack. So let's resort this mess with yards allowed to wide receivers. That gives us the Saints, Raiders, Jets, Panthers, and Giants as matchups to exploit. Time to dig in. The Saints are the perennial punching bag for wideouts, but this week they get a Chiefs team that's just boring when it comes to the passing game. Last week, the Chiefs had a dream matchup with the Raiders, and they came up with only 224 passing yards. Jeremy Maclin finished the week with 49 receiving yards on 3 targets, continuing a slide into near irrelevance. In fact, let's take a deeper look at Maclin's season, just to show you how disappointing this guy's been. Through no fault of his own, though, in 5 games this season, Maclin has just 23 catches on 40 targets for 293 yards and a touchdown. That's 58.6 yards per game. It's the lowest average since his rookie season. The most frustrating part is Maclin's game log. He's had great matchups against the Jets, Steelers, Raiders in his last 3 weeks, and now he's got the Saints. It really doesn't get any easier than this string of games. And what has Maclin shown for it? 18 total targets, fewer than 50 yards in 2 of his last 3 games. That's gross. I'm looking at my fantasy feast card here on HotRoster, and I see Maclin up against Amari Cooper, and Maclin's getting 1.5 fantasy points. Look, I know it's tempting to take Maclin with the points, but there's no way I'm going with that guy. On to the Jacksonville Jags. Yeah, baby! This is a team that's all over the place. And you'd think they'd be coming off a bye. You'd think they'd be feeding Allen Robinson the ball over and over and over until he's full, right? Pfft, wrong. Robinson finished with 49 yards on 3 catches off 6 targets. But hey, Marquise Lee had 61 yards and Aurelius Ben scored a touchdown. And now they get the Raiders. And I'm thinking this is Robinson's breakout week. Unlike Maclin, Robinson's been getting targets in this pass-happy offense. He has 3 games with 10 or more targets, 3 touchdowns on the season, and this is a guy that had 1,400 yards and 14 TDs last year. The Raiders also struggle a bit against top-flight receivers. For instance, Brandon Cooks tallied 143 yards and 2 touchdowns, Julio hung 106 and a score, and Steve Smith nabbed 111 and a touchdown. While Travis Benjamin and Tyrell Williams, they both had 117 receiving yards against Oakland. So I'm looking at Robinson to get back on track this week. Let's say 10 targets, 8 receptions, 119, and a touchdown. And on our fantasy feast card, Robinson's up against T.Y. Hilton, with Hilton getting a point. Look, I love T.Y. Hilton a lot, but he's facing a Tennessee defense that's been better than people think, thanks in part to their defensive coordinator, Dick LeBeau. Plus Hilton, he's been all over the place in terms of output. In his last 5 games, he has 3 games of 40-something yards and 2 games of 170-something yards. That's a big discrepancy. Hey, there's not a lot of middle ground with Hilton. Yes, he has 9 or more targets in every game this year, but you can't trust the swings and consistency. Until Moncrief returns, we know T.Y. is going to get a lot of attention from opposing Ds. Allen Robinson hasn't been great, but he's seeing passes, and he's not doing these wild up and downs. Give me the hope of a breakout over the disappointment of another 40-something game. Robinson it is. Rounding out the matchups, you have the Jets, who I don't think are as bad as the numbers might indicate, going up against the Ravens. With Steve Smith likely out again, or at least limited, I'd lean towards Mike Wallace and Kamar Aiken, maybe a little Brashad Perriman sprinkled in there, but I'm not too excited. But the Giants, here's where we can find some fantasy goodness. The G-men get the Rams in London Sunday morning, and it could get interesting. The Giants tend to lock down the opposition's top wideout, but let's see what the number 2s and 3s, these guys can gain some big-time yards. And I think Kenny Britt has established himself as the top gun in LA, so look at Tavon Austin to get it done. Austin has 49 targets, and Case Keenum has been looking at him a good amount. We just haven't seen the results, as Austin has 242 yards on the season and just 1 touchdown. But if the Giants focus on Britt and Austin gets the targets, we could see the breakout game from him at long last. Austin is my sleeper play of the week, and I don't see him on any cards just yet, but if I do, I'm probably leaning on the Austin side. Give me an over-under of 8, baby, and I'm going over the number. The theme this week, The wide receivers with the best matchups have generally done big bags of nothing so far this season, so there's some measured risk. But if you get a breakout from that disappointing Allen Robinson or the underperforming Tavon Austin, don't be surprised. And make sure to check out HotRoster today with me and the stats man Gary and Thorne every weekday at 4:30, and then take that information we're giving you and use it to win at HotRoster. This is week 7, baby. We're in the thick of it. I'm Cam Stewart for the Fantasy Sports Network. I'll see you on the virtual gridiron.